Well, a spike in tensions with Moscow after a U.S. fighter jet shoots down a Syrian warplane that targeted U.S.-backed coalition fighters. Russia responding with a threat. All coalition planes over Syria will be tracked and treated as possible targets. Will the situation continue to escalate? General Joseph Dunford, chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, says the two sides must keep working together.
We've worked very hard on deconfliction, and it's important to point out why. For the last 8 months, we worked on deconfliction with the Russian Federation and pro-regime forces through the Russians. The purpose was to make sure that our air crews were safe, to make sure our personnel on the ground were safe, and to make sure we could prosecute the Defeat ISIS campaign in Syria, which is the reason why we're in Syria.
For more, I'm joined by Fox News contributor Rick Grenell. He's a former spokesman to the U.S. ambassador to the UN. Rick, thanks for joining us. So both sides must work together, he says. Will they?
I like to hear that we're going to have talks and that diplomacy is going to carry the day. Look, I think that what we have under the Donald Trump administration, it's a new day. We have a credible threat of military action, emphasis on the credible, and we have seen that in the willingness of Donald Trump and Secretary Mattis to go and go after, with an F-18, go after these Syrian planes who were threatening our allies, the Kurds, who are trying to defeat ISIS. Remember that the U.S. national security interest inside Syria is only to defeat ISIS at this point. We need to wrestle the idea of what the U.S. policy is towards Assad. In the last administration, the articulated U.S. policy was that Assad should go, but nothing was done to really make Assad go. So we're in this limbo period where the Trump administration is going to have to figure out exactly what our policy is towards Assad, and then we're going to have to work very diligently with diplomacy, backed up by credible threats of military action, to get that done.
Rick, Russia's deputy foreign minister saying downing the jet was akin to, quote, helping the terrorists that the U.S. is fighting against. Strong words.
Well, look, they're not supportive of the Kurds, and the Kurds are our ally. And, you know, we also have a problem in that our NATO ally, Turkey, is not supportive of this action. So what we need to be able to do is to really, utilize diplomacy, get everyone at the table. And again, you can make progress diplomatically if, when the U.S. representative arrives at that table and everybody around that table knows that there is a threat of a credible threat of military action if diplomacy fails. So many times as a diplomat, when I would go into meetings, we knew that we had the upper hand. We knew that we could deliver if everybody around the table would realize that if we failed in this moment around the table, that we would have to transfer the file to the Pentagon, and the Pentagon doesn't negotiate.
What do you make so far, Rick, of the Trump administration's messaging on all of this and their communication on all of this, and particularly their response since this happened?
Well, what specifically are you asking about, the response since the F-18?
Yes, exactly. And now that we just see the tensions rising between Russia and the United States, Trump's response, his national security team has earned the respect all over the globe, as we just saw him make that first international trip. How do you see his response going forward? You're making a lot of suggestions that what it should be. What will they do?
Well, look, I was really encouraged to see General Dunford talk about diplomacy. So what we have in Secretary Mattis is somebody who really doesn't want to have a war, but is willing to fight and protect U.S. national security. So I think the message is sent loud and clear that we have a credible threat of military action. That is enormously helpful for the diplomats. What we need is diplomacy with muscle right now. We have to be able to bring everyone to the table and try to forge a consensus diplomatically, because I think we've cleaned up the military side, where we now, through the bombing in Syria originally, when we went after the planes that were delivering some chemical weapons, and now when you see the downing of this F-18, by the F-18, the downing of the Syrian plane, people understand, Russia, Iran, everyone understands that the United States will draw a line, and that line will not be crossed.
Yeah, it's a very clear message that was sent. Rick Grenell, thank you.